You are listening to the Age of Heroes podcast, a podcast dedicated to pop culture, fandom, and the geek world. My name is JP Sarricolea. I am a digital creator committed to inspiring others to pursue their passions, their dreams, and goals. I am sitting down with creators and influencers from all walks of life to talk about their work, their experiences, and how to make a positive impact. Welcome to the show. Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of Age of Heroes. This episode for this week, and I have a guest of honor who I'm privileged to have with me. We've been back and forth trying to get this done because he is a busy man. He is a busy artist, probably the busiest I know. And this is Joe Menna, a fantastic artist who I admire. He has been in the industry for many, many years. He has worked for so many different companies, and he has produced so many amazing products. Whether it's statues, action figures, you name it. And everybody that follows him knows, the type of artist he is. He's not only a great artist, he's also a great human being. He's always sharing a lot of wisdom, always talking about the industry, about the arts, about his life. And definitely a person that I admire very, very much. So I'm privileged to have him today. So welcome to the show, Joe. How are you today?
Thank you, JP. I really can't thank you enough for the invitation. It's an honor to talk to you, be talking with you. I appreciate your patience and giving me and not saying the hell with it because I canceled so many times, to postpone rather, never cancel, just
Yes.
kind of push it off. So thanks, man. I haven't been in an industry, haven't had an industry chat in a little while, so this is cool. I mean, this might be the first one since COVID that I've
Oh,
really
wow.
done on.
Yeah, COVID changed everything for sure. So many
Yeah,
things change. And for those who are watching, they're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to show, I think some of the work from Joe. But one thing that always amazed me about your work is that you have done so many things that sometimes are unknown to the public or people do not know that actually you put your hand on it, that you were involved in the team that work on that. And one of my favorite pieces that I did not know you produce is this little bus right here. This
Star-Lord.
Star-Lord, yeah. I was looking
Yeah.
at it, and it's my favorite rendition of Star-Lord. Of course, this is based on the art on the Run by Lanning and Abbott. It's just amazing, and I love it. And I did not know you produced it until one time you just showcased on Facebook, or I think it was on Instagram. You showed the renderings of the work, and I was like so glad. It was cool for me. It was my favorite bus in this line. I have a lot of pieces from this line, but it's my favorite now that I know that you were the one who did it. So
Thank you. It's very.
it is my favorite.
That was art directed by my buddy Gabriel Garcia, I
Okay.
believe. I don't know if you Gabe himself is a great sculptor, and now he works for Diamond / Gentle Giant.
Mm-hmm.
I just visited. We made a LA visit, kind of like a comeback tour, just to get reunited with all my industry friends, and I visited him. When we did that, what's interesting, you see the renders, his arms straight out.
Yeah.
But I think for packaging, there's certain reasons,
Oh,
or just to make the pose cooler, they bent the arm a little bit up.
I
But
see.
yeah.
That makes sense.
And what's cool about that is for James Gunn's final Guardians run, that's going to be the costume for all of them, right?
Oh yeah.
It's in the trailer, at least they're all wearing the uniform, which is super cool.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that this is a fascinating comic book run, and definitely took I would say with the MCU, with the movies and James Gunn take on it. It's been fantastic in my opinion. So I'm looking forward to the new film.
Absolutely, yeah, and but I did that for the former incarnation of Gentle Giant when
We're working
they were
by
owned by this guy.
themselves.
Yeah, they were owned by this Carl, who's a good guy, but then I believe then they got bought. Then Carl, they kind of got bought by a company called 3D Systems,
Mm-hmm.
and now now happily, I think they're enjoying. I think their most productive time under the leadership of my friend Chuck, the guy who runs Diamond Select Toys, and you know, I still do Diamond and Gentle Giant,
Mm-hmm.
slash Gentle Giant are now my oldest running client.
Mm-hmm.
They particularly through the pandemic, they were really gracious to me because it's do one job and we're waiting for approvals. Give me another job. And we're still waiting for approvals, and both of those to give me another job. So they kept me, but they kept me busy
Mm-hmm.
throughout the pandemic, where almost everyone else, for understandable reasons, like Dark Horse Comics as well, gave me as many jobs as they could, and I'm still working for both companies. But that was like kind of like something I was very luck. It was luck, but the whole time I've been in collectibles, once I was at a point where I could have, once I was at a point where I was able to benefit, once I was able to enjoy the trust of multiple companies at once,
Mm-hmm.
because at first you're trying to just get in, but once I got in, like Flynn says in Tron 2, I got in, and I always tried to keep I tried to keep a client base of like 3, 4, 5 clients, because I just always knew. I'm not trying to say did not anticipate the pandemic, but
Mm-hmm.
you just never know, right? And when you have like you and I have talked about offline with the family and stuff like that, I just always tried to juggle as many plates as I could without compromising quality,
Mm-hmm.
because I just had a feeling like, I wanted to, it was just kind of like always have like, not that I would wish any ill fortune on any one of my clients, because they're all great to me, but I just figured, like, who knows, right? So, and then what happened was, what, DC Warner Brothers shuttered DC Direct, and Sideshow was using fewer freelancers, and a couple other companies I work with, it just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
COVID was too difficult to maintain, or they went full time in house, stuff like that. But Diamond in particular gave me the most amount of work, and Dark Horse has smaller output than Diamond, and Dark Horse gave me as much work as they could too, and I'm still working for both companies this weekend.
Yeah. And one thing I definitely, I follow many artists online. I don't consider myself an artist, of course, because I don't sculpt or do the things you do. But I love to be or to listen to the advice, or to hear the opinions in reference to the art from people like you, from people that are involved in the industry. And I definitely recommend any collectors to do that, because you will learn a lot by listening to people like you. And one thing I love about you is not necessarily the fact that you're an artist, is that you are, at the end of the day, whether you do this work or other work, you are a fan of these things you do. You are a big geek, just like me, just like most of collectors. And you're passionate about comics. You're passionate about, whether it's Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and you always sharing that. And to me, it's like I feel like I can relate to someone like you, and I think most collectors can relate to people like you, because you are one of us. At the end of the day, you're one of us. And how did you got to this, to become an artist? How did you went into this journey for many years to get to the point you're at right now?
I don't know how much of a geek I consider myself. I mean, I do have an ultimate nullifier tattooed on the side of my neck.
Yeah.
I got Jack. I have Jack on one arm because Jack Kirby
Uh
invented
huh.
the modern comic,
Uh huh.
and Neil Adams made them
Neil
real.
Adams. Yep.
I've got my seal of Rassilon. I've got my Jedi. I got my Jedi Order. I got my Terrell Logo Corporation. I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but the same. See, it's like I grew up. What was the question? Talking too much.
No, you're good.
How
How,
did I?
how do you get
How,
into all of this? How do you, from being a
I
fan, become a person in the industry?
I love comics ever since I was a little kid. Told this story many times. My grandparents had a house down at the beach, down the shore in Ocean in New Jersey, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
boardwalk there, with rides and all that stuff. There was a bookstore, and then they sold comic books. And I remember my grandmother bought me my grandmother bought me my very first comics, and I still have a lot of them. In particular, though, I remember some World's Finest that she bought me. I think it was around the time of the Super Sons run, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit before that even, and just comics for me were just There's a sideshow was really gracious to me and did an artist profile, and there's a story in there that's true about how I was sick, and I was in the hospital I was in a coma for 18 hours. And when I
Oh
came
wow.
out of it, I was like, my mom said I was there with crayons, like scribbling. I was all the artistic. I don't want to sound pretentious, but it's like I never ever thought about anything else, like other than drawing or being an artist. Whatever. I didn't think about being an artist. I just drew. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know the word artist when I was a little kid. And then I would look at comic books and stuff. And I was just recently interviewed for actually this is my first um, industry interview, but it's just an interview for my day job where I related the same story where comics meant so much to me. Star Wars didn't come out till I was 7, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm 50. I'm going to be 53 next Friday, which is awesome because it's my birthday and one of my absolute favorite superheroes. It's kind of like a tie between Superman, Captain, which is they call it Shazam, and well, my favorite three DC superheroes are Superman, Shazam, and Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So Shazam 2 comes out. I mean, I could go see it Thursday, but officially it releases on the 17th, my birthday. So I'm like stoked. All three of my kids are coming with me, and
Your brother, yeah.
that it means a lot to me. I mean, I have the old Filmation series on
Uh-huh.
digital, and I had the entire run, the DC's revival run, and I had Superman versus Shazam. I had Joe Staten do a Shazam commission for me a couple years ago or
Mm.
during COVID. But I always loved comics, and I was always drawing them and stuff like that, making my own or copying covers. And I remember my grandfather made this special like romper room for my brother and myself, and he took a desk and he cut the legs off and the chair, sawed the legs down so I could sit and draw all the time.
Oh, wow.
And I remember one time it was an Action Comics cover by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm there trying to copy it. And my grandpa came up and he was like, "It's Superman fighting the atomic skull on the cover, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And that yellow costume with the skull logo. And my grandfather's like, "Why don't you move this over here? Try and make it your own." Grandfather's always pushing me to try to be not not that I was copying all the time, but he was just always pushing me to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
Like he said, if I designed a car, he'd send it to Chrysler. I mean, like, and he, like literally,
Mm-hmm.
he was really amazing. He died when I was 11. He was my best friend, but his presence still looms largely in my life. And Star Wars just blew me out of the water, and then then the Marvel comics that came out with that were just amazing,
Mm-hmm.
I got into doing like not just drawing my own stuff. But I always read a lot too, not just comics.
Mm-hmm.
I got at a very early age, I got deeply into I read the entire Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, all 4 books. By the time I was like, by the time I was in 6th grade, by the time I was 11, I'd read all of them.
Mm.
I couldn't get through the Silmarillion,
Yeah.
but and I got really into Dune. I was big into Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Simultaneously, I was very much interested in Greek
Mythology.
mythology. Arthurian legend was my favorite, but global mythology in general. Was blessed with a really fantastic 6th grade teacher who just turned us on to all that stuff. And yeah, Egyptian mythology is really big for me, but Arthurian legend in particular became very special for me. But so parallel to this love of comics and art and all that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading all this science fiction, and especially with 7th grade, I got turned on to Dune, and that was just revelatory.
Yeah.
And big into Dungeons and Dragons. I still have all my little pewter figures, and I got about 50 modules still. And I was always the DM. I always had to be the DM because I was the big mouth, right? Because but the DM was the creative job. It was like that was I never liked playing. I always like either exaggerating the module, diverging from the module,
Mm-hmm.
or making my own adventures. And I always made my character an NPC and just gave him like, you know, I didn't take long for me to elevate him to God status with like 300 hit points. But yeah, like but I was always into like the more esoteric stuff, not the Dungeons and Dragons. See, the cool thing about comics and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had challenges when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I never felt like I fit in. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I have a very extroverted personality,
Mm-hmm.
but even to this day, this is my personality. But it's not like there's still a lot of insecurities. And when
Mm-hmm.
I was a
Mm-hmm.
kid, it was magnified, you know, a millionfold.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when John Byrne, Chris Claremont, when I got it, there was a 7-Eleven. Later on, we moved around a little bit. And the place where we settled, there was a 7-Eleven with a spinner rack.
Mm-hmm.
Then this is before like there was a comic. There was one comic shop like near my other grandparents' house
Mm-hmm.
called Fat Jack's Comic Crypt. It was an extension of a famous one in Philadelphia that's still down. I think they're closing down. I forget. Or maybe anyway. When I first engaged, it was X-Men 123, the one with arcade,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
I think it's 123. When I first got that comic, that's my first X-Men comic. Um, I had seen like in Amazing Adventures reprints of the old X-Men,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't really know who they were. Or I would see like, maybe in the odd, I knew who Magneto was, but I didn't really know who the X-Men. And once I really got into Chris Claremont's X-Men,
Yeah.
John Byrne, the beauty of the X-Men is like, so all of us say all of us kids who grew up
Mm-hmm.
feeling like outcasts, but loved all this world of fantasy, right? This
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, enriching, inspired your imagination, gave you a place to hide out in, gave you these characters became like your friends.
Mm-hmm.
When you read the X-Men and they're all ostracized by society, they're all treated like they're all outcasts, but together they're special and they're a family. That's how I identify with the X-Men. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm-hmm.
was like, wow, being different's cool, right? I mean, Marvel was always like about that, like,
Yeah.
but the X-Men really underscored that, like no comic ever had before to me. And I knew always Peter Parker always had girlfriend problems and shit and stuff like that, but
Mm-hmm.
like, and then I remember like driving around the neighborhood and my mom I'm in the passenger seat of the car. I'm like, it was hours at the time, right? Nobody knew about the X-Men. I think they were on Spider. There was one episode of Spider-Man and their Amazing Friends and his Amazing Friends that they were in because
Mm-hmm.
Firestar was a mutant. But really, nobody knew the X-Men publicly. So I felt special, like Wolverine was mine. Like I drive around, he doesn't know who Wolverine is. That lady in that car, she doesn't know who Wolverine is. I was like, yeah, this is great. you know. And then got into high school. Started still drawing comic style stuff. I really lucky to have a great high school art teacher who got me into doing fine art as well, going to like special programs, summer programs, weekend programs. Started going on a fine art vector after I saw Kirk Douglas's portrayal of Vincent Van Gogh in Lust for Life, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And but I never, I never, I also at that time, all this time, like, my dad made me read the complete works. I read the entire canon of Greek literature, of Greek drama and Greek tragedy and comedy and epic poetry by the time I was in seventh grade. The
Oh
Iliad,
wow.
the Odyssey,
Yeah.
Hesiod's Theogony, all of Aeschylus, all of Sophocles,
Yeah.
read all that stuff. And then I kept reading a lot. So I was reading literature, science fiction, fantasy, and comics all at the same time. Moby Dick became my favorite book. Call Me Ishmael. I have it tattooed on my arm for a
Oh
reason,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how I talked my way into AP English senior year of high school. I was not like a good student, but and that's I had a great English teacher my senior of high school who really got me on like if I was ever going to have like if I lost the ability to be an artist, um like being studying world literature would be my thing, because English literature, my favorite writer is no longer my favorite writer is Jorge Luis Borges, who was a
Mm.
Argentinian writer of short
Mm-hmm.
stories. um but so all this stuff just coalesced. I went to art school, and I wound up meeting this incredible mentor. His name's Leonid Lerman. I hung out with him last night here, as you
Mm.
know. That's why
Yeah.
we had to postpone last night. But this guy sculpted and drew, and it's just this philosophical and spiritual outlook on life was totally radically different from anything I ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was trying to be a figurative artist, and everything here sucked at the time. I mean, literally everything in all of Europe, they'd abandoned the traditional ways of studying. As far as I knew, there was no internet back then or that stuff.
Mm-mm.
And So I followed him to New York after I finished college because I had to get scholarships for everything.
Mhm.
And I continued to study with him as I finished college, I finished grad school, went to New York grad school, worked as a waiter in Manhattan for 2 years to save up money to go to school. He went to school in Russia,
Mm.
and I studied there for 2 years. And met my wife. I had my daughter there, my first daughter, and I came back and I lost all interest in comics and stuff.
Mm.
And I just wanted to be like I just wanted to make sculptures and that were my own voice, my own things, my own whatever. I was into mythology and I was just trying to explore this world of making sculpture. And but I still was always doing like the odd like, dwarf drawing or the odd like, the I just could never fully got away from it, right? I could never fully got away from it. And I think the thing that actually ultimately drove me to be a sculptor, so like because I was always thinking about this when I was studying sculpture, is Jack Kirby.
Mhm.
Because I think Jack Kirby was, as much as he was a great storyteller and as beautifully as he drew,
Mhm.
it never bothered me the way he drew it. When I saw Jack Kirby and I was a kid,
Yeah.
the hand looking like this and the squiggles, the chunkiness of it, to me
Yeah.
it just looked right. I was like, cool, this is great.
Mhm.
I was like, wow, this guy's doing his own thing, man. This is like, but Jack Kirby, especially when you look at his uninked pencils, which when in my teenagers years I got to see more of,
Mhm.
because you're buying like zines or you're looking at like there's different magazines that printed like uninked art and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Jack Kirby's work is so sculptural,
It
so
is.
chunky, it's so plastic, like it's so thick and solid and chunky and structured.
Mhm. Mhm.
Every like look at those panels like Cap like knocking over a bunch of soldiers or whatever. My favorite. I actually have it in my office at work. I have one of like the kind of things you have in your back
Mhm.
wall.
Mhm.
I have I forget, it's the bicentennial issue, the
The
Mad Bomb,
bicentennial issue. Yeah.
not the bicentennial treasury. I have that too.
Oh, okay.
But it was the issue where like it's the Mad Bomb. It's the
Yeah.
anniversary, and it's Cap and Falcon.
And the
Falcon are
falcon in the
coming
background. Yeah.
at you. Yeah, man, and that issue for me that blew my mind. And there was another issue with the dude that has the exposed brain. Everything once I got into Jack Kirby, like I was obsessed with Jack Kirby, and my uncle had a box of 260 DCs. We're supposed to talk about collectibles, right? I'm making this a comic
That's okay.
podcast. I was
You're
upset,
good.
man. Once I got my eyes on Neil Adams, it was a Brave and the Bold.
Uh huh.
Actually, yeah, actually, there's a couple World Finest issues that my uncle had. He had about 200 Silver Age 60 DCs, exclusively DCs. When I saw Neil Adams, I was like, holy, what is this, man?
Yeah. Neil Adams.
I'm like, dude. So I was like, that's what I'm saying. Like Jack Kirby, kind of for me. I think Jack Kirby and the other really cool thing is, 1976. We're staying down at my grandparents' house, my parents and my brother and I, Easter time, because nobody's down there. The town was empty. And that Easter, I got a Amigo Shazam action figure.
Mm.
We weren't religious, but I don't know. We got presents on Easter, like I don't know. So I got Amigo Shazam action figure, but I got the Fireside slipcase edition of Origins and Sons of Origins of Marvel Comics,
Mm.
and that too, like that cemented Jack Kirby for me as like, oh, this. I mean, by the time I'm 6 years old, I'm a Jack Kirby guy, right?
Mm.
And Neil Adams is doing Neil Adams in the 70s. You'd see him do like the Adam Strange Justice League cover. He's doing like, if you don't know Neil Adams, as a kid, you're just seeing him do the odd cover here and there.
Mhm.
But then when I got my uncle's box of 60 DCs, and I'm seeing like these World's Finest issues, and then that famous
Minus.
Brave and the Bold issue with Batman, Dead Man's coming out of Batman, and the Hook's about to kill Batman,
Yes.
and then all the other, he did a couple. My uncle ultimately gave me that collection. I had a stack of Neil Adams stuff. And then when I realized that when Marvel reprinted the Roy Thomas, Neil Adams, Tom Palmer X-Men stuff, and
Uh huh.
and then DC was reprinting the Green Arrow, Green Lantern stuff. Oh, I know. No, you know how I actually first really got into Neil Adams?
Uh huh.
DC did a lot of treasury editions,
Yeah.
and there was one called The Best of DC, and it had that very very famous Denny O'Neil Neil Adams story about the Reaper. It's like if there's a Halloween parade and they're parodying Marvel characters and stuff, and it's the Holocaust victim, right? And he puts on the Reaper mask and everything.
Uh-huh.
And there's that one panel where he's swinging at Robin, and then he
Yeah.
sees he sees the star, the Star of David,
David.
and he realizes like he's become exactly what he was like trying to vent his anger about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. So there's comics were a big part of everything for me, and Jim Starlin, Captain Marvel,
Mm-hmm.
Silver Surfer for me, all that shit, right? I shouldn't curse, sorry. So
You're good.
not if well, I don't not if my people at work see it. I gotta be cool. So um so while I finished grad school
Uh-huh.
and I interview I meet a couple of assistant editors. My idea is like, well, I'm gonna draw I'm gonna sculpt all day and draw comics at night. So I
Mm,
interviewed with Paul Kupperberg at DC,
okay.
and he's like, you said you draw really well, but you can't tell a story. Would you like to try inking? And I said no, and he's like, it's too bad we don't do sculptures. This is like 1993,
Wow.
and then I got an interview with Don Perlin. I showed him my portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Don Perlin totally ripped me a new asshole. Don Perlin,
Don
Defenders,
Perlin.
like
Yeah.
legendary guy, Valiant, all these ex Marvel guys led by Bob Layton. It was a really cool company at the time in the 90s, and they're back.
Uh-huh.
But another shot, they gave me, but despite the fact that he pounded me, he said, give him a sample script. So I got like 4 pages of Solar Man of the Atom, and I did those, and I took them to New York Comic Con, but I'd already had my ticket to go check out Russia.
Yeah.
And I showed the editor of Solar. She said, "This is better what we published." She's like, "We'll hire you. This would be great." I was like, "Thank you, but I'm kind of already I've already chosen a different path." So it was always a lingering regret. So the cool thing was, so I come back from Russia. I get this awesome, incredible day job, which is like a gift from the stars.
Uh-huh.
But I got a family, right? So I'm not. I need to make as much money as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody offers me an opportunity to do some freelancing for Hasbro.
Oh wow.
I got from Russia, and I had a really crappy job for 8 years, a horrible job actually. But I learned digital there. So by the time it's like 2005, when I get an opportunity get connected to Hasbro, I'm already working digitally. My own stuff I'm still making out of clay, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm already digitally conversant. So I did a tryout. Guy said, show me what you could do. So I went out and bought a Marvel Legends Pyro. I pulled it apart literally and tried to reconstruct it in software, sculpt it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
do the joints and all that. And I sent him the file. He's like, yeah, cool. All right. So he gives me a job of doing the Ironmonger for the first Iron Man film. I'm like, wow, shit, this is cool.
Yeah.
And so I did it, and they printed it up and they sent it back to me. And they said, we got a problem here. We're going to send it to you. So you'll see what's going on here. And I'm going to pull up, excuse me.
It's okay.
I'm going to take my little McFarlane dark side here
Uh-huh.
because basically when they gave me the prints all assembled,
Uh-huh.
like imagine this arm supposed to, like nothing moved.
Uh-huh.
Everything, all the joints were locked in, the elbows, the knees, the hips, nothing moved.
No
I think
articulation.
the only thing I think worked was, no, I articulated it, but I did it. Everything was locked in. Like I didn't give clearances.
Oh, I see.
I didn't design it properly. I didn't design the arc. I didn't know how to articulate. So this art director was a very toxic person to me. But at the same time, he was incredibly gracious. Like he was very abrasive
Uh-huh.
in his language towards me, but somehow he had this infinite patience that he still allowed me the opportunity to correct it till it worked. So that was great of him, actually. That was great of him. And and then I started working, and then I was doing some more. I did a Red King. It was like one of those fan poll ones, and
Mm-hmm.
so they only made a prototype of it. It didn't get selected, so it never got made. Then I started doing some developmental stuff for the Hulk. Uh, I'm really, one of the things that really helped me out, Shiflett Brothers form. The Shiflett Brothers,
Mm-hmm.
I'm posting my traditional clay sculpts, plastiline sculpts
Mm-hmm.
on there of Captain Marvel and Thor and some of the digital stuff. And the Shiflett Brothers, Jared and Brendan, really were encouraging me. A lot of people are big names in the industry today were all in that forum back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a real old fashioned forum, you
Yeah.
know, not the one that they have with 60,000 plus members on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
This was a different kind of community. It was more
Mm-hmm.
intimate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we all had anonymous nicknames and all kind of stuff, and got a lot of encouragement there. I pitched, I emailed Randy Bowen for work. He wanted to give me a Mephisto based on my plastiline sculpts
Mm-hmm.
of Captain Marvel, and he was going to give me a shot based on this Conan that I did, and a Captain Marvel. And I pitched him on doing it digitally. He's like, we never did that. So, so he gave me the opportunity to do that, and I sculpted it digitally, and I got it printed up. And back then, you couldn't print the print envelopes were so small. I had to stack all the pieces together like Legos and
Mm-hmm.
do all this crazy stuff. I had to figure out, like, the budget that we agreed on. I had to figure out, like, okay, I'll do the head like at the highest resolution, the body lower resolution, and the cape and the chair the lowest resolution, because that was the way to economically do it.
Mm-hmm.
I asked a guy named Adam Smith to cast it for me. The guy who's well known, and he's a prototyper in the industry, because I wanted a really clean resin cast.
Mm-hmm.
And and then Randy had me. I was using some squadron putty and stuff to fix it up. Right, she sending photographs to Randy,
Mm-hmm.
and then he made it. And now I know Gentle Giant was doing stuff. The reason I felt it was imperative for me to switch to doing statues is I saw DC Direct had produced a couple Dark Knight statues by Colby Jukes. It was a video. It was like
Mm-hmm.
a genius. He's one of the best digital sculptors on the planet, and he's in video games. He might even be at Blizzard now. But so Colby Jukes, his Heath Ledger
Mm-hmm.
and his Christian Bale Batman, they blew me away. And so he and other people in Zebra Central starting to, like I'm seeing 3D prints being done. uh, I knew DC was going digital, or well, at least was, because they actually showed the digital image like
Mm-hmm.
as a pre-sale thing. So I'm like, I got to get on the. I'm like, whoa. This is like my thing. I'm like, I got to get on. I got to get in front of this.
Yeah.
So, Gentle Giant, I think, had been doing digital. A couple companies, toy companies were doing a lot of digital, but the statue companies not so much, except for Gentle Giant, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. Maybe so. I don't know. I don't know anything what Sideshow was doing at that point. Um, So, but I think that the Mephisto was the first independently produced digital statue in the industry. Like, I did it myself, and I put
Mm-hmm.
it out. It wasn't like wasn't a machine pushing. It wasn't a corporate. It wasn't a company making it. I made it for Randy, and delivered it just as any other deliverable would have been sent to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gave me a couple more, and it worked out. And I went to Wizard World Toy Fair Hall of Fame, 2008. 2007? I don't remember. Randy Bowen actually designed this award, and it was the first Toy Fair Hall of Fame award show. So my buddies, the Schiffel brothers, are there in person. All these companies that normally would not come to Philadelphia for a Wizard show. This is when they still had Wizard shows.
Yeah.
They were there, and it was cool. So I'm trying to talk to different companies. I go to this guy who I think does. I don't know. So I approach these different booths. Like, first I meet the Shiflets, and that's awesome, and we're hugging and meet my family, taking pictures. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to approach different booths to show my work. Clay Moore was really nice to me,
Mm-hmm.
but he said he didn't.
You need
He
to.
wasn't hiring anybody. NECA was really NECA was really like nasty to me. I mean, I don't want to name anybody by name, but the head guy there, he's like, I'm showing him my traditional stuff. I mean, I'm almost sound egotistical. This could sound like really shitty. Excuse my language. But I'm more classical training experience. Like, I sculpted 100 life-size figures in the 8 years between Russia and this time.
Mm-hmm.
I had 10 years of classical training. I had 18 years of classical training experience, right?
Yeah.
Like sculpting life-size figures, sculpting monuments, sculpting everything, hyper-realistic anatomy, everything you can imagine, hyper-realistic clothing, every scale. And I have a portfolio full of this traditional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But digital is what I was doing now. So when I showed this dude my portfolio, he was like, well, it's really good, but because it's digital, it's not. I'm like, all right. And he's like, digital has no future. Digital has no future.
What?
you know yeah. And now, like, half the stuff
They do is digital.
yeah, and that's all fine. And so I've had a problematic relationship. I've never worked with them. I've tried to be friendly. I take all, probably my personality that has been repellent in some way, Like even this last New York Comic Con, I talked to one of my old art directors from DC, and he's there, and he wouldn't even look at me. And it's probably something I did. Maybe I offended him. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so NECA is a company I've never worked for, ever. And but so anyway, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to diss them. I mean, they do. I collect NECA stuff. Um, I have the Nada figure that they did, the Roddy Piper figure. I
Mm-hmm.
have a couple of. They do great work. They do incredible work.
They do.
They did a better Batman, Michael Keaton Batman than I did, but I did mine in 2009. But I'm not saying mine's not the best because I don't want to disrespect any company that I may have worked for, but that Michael Keaton Batman is pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So they do incredible work. God bless them. And so then I go to the DC booth and I'm like, are the DC direct people here? I'm like, no. And this kid looks at me and he's like, he writes down somebody's name on a business card and he slides it to me. He's like, don't tell anybody I gave you this.
Uh-huh.
And it's the name of this guy, George Brewer, is the head of DC Direct then. So I emailed George. George is like, wow, your work's great. I'm going to forward it to my art director, Jim Fletcher. I email Jim every month, every month on the month for a year, 12 months solid.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the blue, this guy, Brian Webster, emails me and he's they want to sculpt this window. I'm like, yeah, great. I make the window.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I guess I'm going to be a prop guy, but cool. It's DC Comics. Like, like for me,
Yeah.
it felt like here I was, trying to get back into the comic
The
world
comic world.
somehow, backdoor through collectibles. And then after I did the window, he's like, now would you like to sculpt this? And it's a drawing of Batman coming out of the window. And that's what kicked it off. That was great. So I worked for DC. Then I started working for Dark Horse, where I met one another. Jim Fletcher was always great to
Mm-hmm.
me. George Brewer, DC went through some changes, and George wasn't there any longer, but he stayed a good friend. Jim's always been a good friend. I started working for Dark Horse,
Mm-hmm.
where I met David Scroggie, who became one of my greatest mentors in the industry. Not about teaching me sculpture and stuff, but just teaching me how to navigate the industry. And just David Scroggie, he's retired now, but he's just a great man.
Mm-hmm.
And Gentle Giant was always great to me. One of my current, my main, one of my absolute, a guy who still art directs me now. This guy Dev Gilmore. I met him when he and Carl were the first two people to interview me at Gentle Giant way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
By getting with Gentle Giant, I got to go to their parties every Comic Con. I got to meet Sir Richard Taylor, who's now I consider one of my dearest friends in the industry, just dearest friends, great friend, period.
Mm-hmm.
He's wonderful to me. He's very. We've been friends for 10, 11 years. Um, uh, uh, met a lot of people in the industry going to Comic Con who are always very gracious to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, got to do like a lot of demonstrations at Comic Con for digital sculpting and this and that. And Sideshow was another company I got to start working for, and they were incredible to me. Worked for them like 10 years or something like that. They did that artist profile like a couple years before the pandemic or something. And
Mm-hmm.
Greg Anzalone, the owner of the company, was always awesome to me. Every art director there, I've never had a bad experience. And then I have to say, Ashley Gilmore, who's married to Dev now. At the time, last name was Ashley Powell.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she was like one of the principals at Gentle Giant for many years, and I really learned a lot from her. I gave them I have a lot of challenges that cause challenges sometimes for people I work for,
Mm-hmm.
and every company's been patient with me, and Ashley in particular. Her, there's not a lot at the not a lot not a lot not a lot of female representation in the collectibles industry, at least not in an executive level.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ashley was very strong um, inspiration for me because she knew her stuff like better than anybody else in the room. And when I got the job that I have now, she was actually one of the first people that I called, and I said, as I go forward in a kind of leadership position, I model myself like after you. And I would think I would like to model myself. Whatever I've learned from you, this is what I'd like to like start my new job
Mm-hmm.
promotion with. And Chuck at Diamond, he's just, man, rock solid. But yeah, so those are all different companies I work for. But being digital in the beginning, that was difficult. That was difficult. Everybody was shitting on me left and right. Everybody said digital's no good.
Mm.
Everybody hated it. All the other sculptors, either they were afraid of it or whatever. And it faced a lot of backlash about the digital stuff from the whole community. People like Tim Bruckner was always very gracious to me, very cool,
Mm-hmm.
but in posts not about me in particular, but he was very, he had his opinions about digital.
Critical, yeah.
That was about the time when he was getting ready to retire. So I'm now like, I kind of like, I loved Tim as an artist, and he was always very kind to me, but he kind of went out, like when he retired, he went out like, he kind of became the cranky old man of the industry. And I mean that affectionately. And
Yeah.
now I think I'm that guy. Honestly, I'm 53 years old, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I understand where now I see why he was cynical and this and that, or I did, but now I don't anymore, because everything changes. That's
Mm-hmm.
all that happens, is everything changes. And so like now, so things went digital, and some folks didn't follow through with that, right?
Yeah.
So they dropped out, and now there's other stuff going on. The industry's contracting. I don't understand how the collectibles business did $246 billion last year. That's everything from baseball cards to resin statues.
Oh, wow.
And but but I know there's a cargo container crisis. Like, there's stuff that just stocked up on the docks for years,
Mm-hmm.
and companies can't make new stuff until they sell the old stuff. A lot of stuff you see coming out now has been sitting on the docks in Hong Kong for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like they just made it last like 6 months ago, the usual cycle.
Yeah, like right now, like McFarlane has been selling a lot of the stuff that they got from DC. All the stuff that when DC closed doors, now it's available. Some of that old stuff that was supposed to be, it was on pre-order, they manufacture, and ultimately they're selling at the McFarlane store
Well,
now.
yeah, they have. Well, they have. I just know from, because the last thing I did for McFarlane was a Static Shock.
Mm-hmm.
They licensed the DC Direct brand, so that means that all that inventory is also like available. I don't understand I don't know the insides are out, but the way McFarlane explained it to me is like, they're DC Direct. They have the
Mm-hmm.
license. So I always had a great relationship with McFarlane. Mike Gullen, I used to work for him. He's a Super 7 now.
Mm-hmm.
Did a ton of, but anyway, so when I was digital, it was really, people gave me a lot of shit, honestly, and it was really awkward. And then within a short period of time, I had tons of guys. I'm not trying to sound like I'm some digital messiah. There were other people doing it besides me. I'm one of the first. I'm not the
The
first,
first, yeah.
but I'm one of the few. And so like, I have guys calling me like, "Oh, can you teach me digital? I don't know how I'm going to feed my family." Or, "Oh, should I buy this software?" Oh, and there's a lot of guys behind the scenes. I helped out a lot of guys behind the scenes, and I don't mean guys in a sexist way. I mean, I'm not trying to use a mono-directional pronoun. I mean, these are all guys, that they just happen to be guys. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the industry was very lopsided in that way for many years. I think my friend Irene Matar pioneered being one of the first well-known women doing collectibles on the sculpting side. She started back at Rhythm Hughes as a traditional sculptor years ago,
Mm-hmm.
along with my friend Rooster. And then she started working for DC Direct, and now she does collectibles for Riot. And she's one of my best friends, along with Juan Balandron. He goes by Rooster. He's a great sculptor. He's the best fine art sculptor, I think, in the country. Um, but yeah, so there's a lot of pushback against digital, but then the companies realize the utility of
Mm-hmm.
the ability to do turnarounds faster. So if you need to make changes, it's so much more efficient. And then I really resented people shitting on digital, because I found digital sculpting to be more like clay sculpting than when I first came back from Russia. And even in a foundry, even in a fine art studio environment,
Mm-hmm.
all these industrial materials and all these different ways of working, to me, were repugnant. Traditional to me not only is a way of thinking and understanding the medium of sculpture, the
Mm-hmm.
art form,
Mm-hmm.
but the media used for equally part of that traditional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Clay, even plastiline, clay, plastiline, wax for casting bronze, or even soft wax for modeling, stone, wood, these different materials. I'm not shitting on people who use super sculpey per se,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the Schiffler brothers are geniuses, and they're
Yeah.
imaginative geniuses, and they move form around like they make super sculpey look like it's butter. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand how they work. I don't understand how they get the fluidity of their work. I can't. I've tried. I can't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
but they're still using a synthetic modern material.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I don't really know anybody. I never saw anybody in the industry that I would consider a traditional sculptor, right? Like Castelline, Hasbro wax, wax pen, synthetic rubbers, silicone rubbers, all these materials. Rodin, if you put him in front of Rodin, he would like be like, what the hell is this?
Mm-hmm.
None of these materials, these are all industrial materials. These are like sculpting action figures in like kind of at the smaller scale with the
Mm-hmm.
wax pen and stuff. That's more like the way jewelers make jewelry. It's not the way sculptors. Maybe Cellini, in the Renaissance,
Mm-hmm.
but most traditional sculptors didn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
No, none of them did. None of them did. They started making gelatin molds in the late 19th century,
Mm-hmm.
but even that was something radically different from the kind of industrial silicone molds, rubbers that would kick like very quickly with different types of catalysts and stuff like that. And I know how to use all that stuff. I worked in a foundry. I mean, I know how to use all these materials. I don't know how to use a wax pen. I mean, I'm not saying that, but I'm not invalidating that. I mean, these people are doing amazing work with these media, but they're still not traditional media. These are industrial media that were created for
That's true.
industry,
Yeah,
the toy industry,
that's
or
right.
whatever, or they're not like
Manufacturing.
yeah, they're not traditional media. They're traditional sculptor means is somebody spent 1,000 hours in front of a live model who's spent thousands of hours drawing from casts and sculpting from live models, life-size figures,
Mm-hmm.
that's done big busts and studied composition and has been part of this system of generational sharings of knowledge, the same way first peoples shared knowledge with each other by demonstrating and doing. And it was like first peoples were a little different, not to homogenize first peoples in North America, but there's
Mm-hmm.
tons of tribes and nations. But from all this, this is a very big interest of mine. And
Mm-hmm.
it's more of an apprentice way of learning. Like, the young boy watches the man, and
And
he
they learn.
follows his motions. And that's tradition is something like there's like music, like music, the tradition, there's different traditions in music, right? Like
Yeah.
any art form has traditions, but like are you going to tell me that like Eddie Van Halen or John Frusciante is like any less of an artist than uh say like Gabriel Fauré or I mean, Mozart's in a whole nother planet, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like, and if you listen to Eruption, or if you listen to Eruption and tell me that's not like effing genius, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's electric guitar, and he was crazy, Eddie Van Halen, right?
Yeah.
He's sitting there Frankenstein and all different types of things. He had like 9 patents or some kind of shit. He
Mm-hmm.
was constantly like building guitars, and to me, it doesn't. Sculpture is about principles. It's about mass, movement, form, weight, design. This, feeling. It's about feeling.
Yeah.
It's not about like if it doesn't make a shit's worth of difference if it's made out of plastic or if it's made out of stone. This is actually quartz, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so people got all bugs up their asses over this stuff, and now everybody's digital,
Now everybody
except for the
is.
great, and this is the best statue I think I've ever seen in the entire industry. It was made by my friend Gene St. Jean. It was for
Mm.
Diamond Select Toys. It was this Gene Colan Dracula,
Yeah.
the flowing cape. Gene still sculpts in wax, and I challenge anybody to name one better action figure statue sculpted in Gene St.
The
Jean.
Gene St. Jean. Yeah.
I mean, my buddy Paul Komodo recently started doing digital stuff. It's kind of cool. Paul Komodo is a very famous sculptor, and he draws like his graphic work is just he's a genius. Period. He worked with Giger, Paul Komodo stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Swamp Thing for Sideshow and
Yeah.
stuff. Well, by coincidence, he grew up like 20 minutes from where I live now. So
Mm.
like prior to COVID, like holiday tradition, when he comes back to visit his folks, we go out to diner, for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
We did a couple times. We're hopefully pick it up again this year. This year he had to cancel, but I've hung out with him in LA, but it's just, it doesn't matter what medium you use, I mean, it's just like, so anyway, I've gone on too long. Is the interview over?
No, you're good. You're good.
So there's so now digital is ubiquitous and everything's great and everybody's making a lot of money. And then because the same technology is being used, ZBrush is used in every, is in the toy industry, it's in the film industry, it's in the video game industry, it's in it's collectibles. You
Mm-hmm.
know, people are, there's this cross pollination of video game artists starting to do statues, and everything's changing, and then you get all these kids from economically disenfranchised countries, or just kids that, you know, kids from parts of South America where they don't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, and because of the internet, and because of the democratization of software being
Correct.
available to everyone.
Everybody. Yeah.
And so I'm not saying you have to have a classical background in that stuff to be a great artist. You know, I mean, there's these kids coming out of nowhere and they're willing themselves and they're just being amazing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, I mean, I think one of the greatest collectible sculptors in the world now. He's so I'm not talking about that. So there's that, but I mean, just the cross pollination. There's guys doing, men and women, and he, she, they, folks from coming from film industry, doing collectibles, video game industry collectibles. Look at Raphael Grassetti, right? I know Raph. I met him a couple bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. He's like the king of video games, right? God of War, executive art director for all the games. He's doing collectible statues for like Sideshow and whatever. He's doing NFTs that are making gazillions of dollars. He's doing covers for DC Comics. He's doing covers for Marvel Comics. You know, I mean, the guy's a machine. This, and if we were all, if he had been working traditionally, I don't know if he would have had that expansive
Experience. Yeah.
output.
Correct.
So I'm just saying, I mean, like, I think the digital stuff opened up a lot of doors for people. What hurt the industry? I don't know what hurt the industry. I know COVID hurt the industry dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
I know I lost a lot of work from a lot of companies, and yeah, I lost a lot of work, like big paydays, and but I understand why. I didn't understand at the time. I took it personally. See, when COVID started, when the industry just started contracting during COVID, I very solipsistically took it personally, and I was like, well, f this, you know, f collectibles. I mean, after all I've done, after all the years I put in, this is what I get back. I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling sorry for myself, and companies are taking away jobs that they gave me, and I'm feeling sorry for myself, and I'm just being an asshole. You know, I got some straight talk from the owner of a company I won't mention. No one I'm working for now, but someone I used to work for is who was a good friend to me, but um, we don't talk like we used to. We don't interface. But he made me say, Joe, it's not you. This is what's going on. This is why. This is the economic reality of this
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, and that kind of calmed me down. And then um, I was ready. I was ready to go full time collectibles like 4 or 5 years ago, 5 years ago, and I didn't. And then I was ready to give up collectibles like a while, like right towards the end of the pandemic, but I couldn't afford to. I was going to look for other ways to make money in the industry. I would
Mm-hmm.
still always work for Diamond because, as far as I'm concerned, the loyalty to Diamond, the support that Diamond gave me during the pandemic is just, there's no way I could ever say thank you enough. And Dark Horse too, but Diamond was the line. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for every 10 Diamond jobs, I got like 2 Dark Horse. And but that for Dark Horse, that is, you know, they make they make dramatically less product than
Correct.
Diamond. So like, yeah, you know, and other companies, I don't know, it just got weird. They start going full house in full house remote, in-house remote, full-time in-house remote, and then other company. It just, everybody got weird, but with good reason. It was a weird time, and I think every company, everybody did their honest best to just try and survive. I mean, companies have mouths to feed, and
Mm-hmm.
people with families working for them, and you know, everybody did their best. So we got through it, and where we are now, I don't know. I'm starting to get. I mean, I don't necessarily. I don't look at I don't think collectibles are like art with a capital A, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Collectibles to me are kind of like the same. Like, collectibles to me, not, I think comic books are far more fine art than collect. I think comics are way more fine art than collectibles, and that's to a point. Because there's like, Bill Sienkiewicz is a commercial artist, or most
Correct.
of his output's commercial, but he transcends he his genius is just like, for me, he's like Gustav Klimt, Egon Schiele, Alberto Giacometti, Emilio Modigliani, and Neil Adams combined, and to become something that's just his work is just transcendent.
Yeah.
Frank Miller's work is transcendent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's great. It's great, and their work will be around forever. But like when you look at collectibles, the collectibles remind me more of the kind of collectible porcelain statues like the Franklin Mint used to make, or the kind of ceramic and porcelain statues that have been around for like 500 years.
Correct.
They're not that fine art. They're just more. They're more intimate than that. For me, collectibles are like, people work hard for their money, and when they come home, it means a lot, right? Whether they work at a gas station, which is awesome and honorable, or whether they're like investment bankers,
Mm-hmm.
when they come home and they have this thing that represents something special.
Correct.
See, for me, collectibles are a doorway to that memory, or to that comic, or that Star Wars movie, or whatever. They're that anchor.
That anchor.
So that whole sphere of experience, to me, they're more of it. They are like an entertainment industry. They're popular art. You know what I mean? They're not gallery. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not like gallery art. It's like Rodin. Even though you could say, Michelangelo was hired by the church, biggest corporation in the world. Different. It's still a little bit different. It's commercial art, but that makes it no less valid, in my opinion.
Correct.
But then there's people in the commercial arts. I haven't seen a sculptor, myself included. No offense to any of my fellow sculptors in the collectibles industry, that has done what Bill Sienkiewicz has done in comics, or what, say, like Mike Allred has done, or like Frank Quitely. Jesus God, what he does is just. I mean, like these guys, they're geniuses they're like. I don't know how to explain it. That's just my prejudice. This is only my opinion. I don't mean to insult anybody.
Right.
There's incredible sculptors that I could never. And the other thing is to see artists. They're people who write their own songs and sing it in their own voices. In the collectibles industry, collectibles are a corporate effort. There's a designer, there's an art director, there's a sculptor, there's a prototyper, there's a prototype painter. It's never one person's thing. So it's not the same kind of thing.
Correct.
It's more like making a movie. That's what I'm saying. It's more like it's more like making a movie than it is like making, expressing your own voice. There's very few people in the Schiffel brothers. They just do originals. They're Schiffel brothers.
Do everything.
They're in a different category. Like, they're their own thing. They are great artists. They're like the Mobiuses, or the
Da Vinci's.
Yeah, no, they're like the Frazetters and Mobiuses of our 3D world. And then you have guys like the Kacharik brothers, whose vision is so unbelievably strong that companies are like they I don't know a lot of sculptors that get to design their own stuff. The Kacharik brothers, they're so phenomenally gifted. There's a lot of talented people out there, but to have that kind of vision that they have, man, shit, they're in a category all by themselves. Paul Komoda's genius is just all over the place. There's a lot of great sculptors. I study Eric Sosa. I'm friends with. I look at all my friends and all their work, like Dave Cortez. So many people I studied when I first started getting the collectibles. Martin Canale, absolute genius with his hands, and Pablo Vigiano, like Martin Canale, Will Harbottle, Matt Black.
Wow.
Everybody in the Sideshow stable. Matt's left. I don't know who else is left. I don't know what's going on with Sideshow. I don't mean in any kind of smart ass way. Last time I had any connection with Sideshow, I had lunch with my friend Matt Bischoff, who was the first guy to hire me at Sideshow when I went out to LA. I love Sideshow, but just saying, like, there's genius talent in the industry. It's different than when you write your own song, you make your own music. It's more like being in an orchestra than being, whereas it's like the difference between it's like being in a band, but you're not necessarily writing the music. You're just but that doesn't mean you're not.
Yeah, you're just playing the cover.
Well, not just. I mean, I'm a big Chili Peppers fan, right? So Flea's a genius, right? But he writes the music too. That's a bad analogy. There's a difference between a Marvel movie and, say, like a Stanley Kubrick film.
Right.
And like Martin Scorsese shits on Marvel movies because they're not cinema. They don't have to be fucking high. Excuse me. They don't have to be high art cinema, right? They could be Marvel movies because that's what they are, and they're awesome for being what they are. there's space enough for everything.
It is. There
So like
is.
that's what I'm saying. Collectibles are more like, like popcorn movies, and then like you can have your high art, nose in the air kind of fine art stuff too.
Award-winning type of movie, yeah. More artsy, artsy movie.
You know what? I tell you what, I just saw The Whale last weekend. Man, that movie changed my life.
I haven't
Literally
watched it yet. I want to watch it. Yeah.
made me reevaluate my entire existence as a father, and then connected to my love of Moby Dick, Herman Melville, and Brendan Fraser gave the most human performance I've ever seen in my life. I've been 53 years old.
Mm.
That movie was amazing. It's better than I mean, it's like my favorite film is a Russian film called Andrei Rublev by my favorite filmmaker Andrei Tarkovsky.
Okay.
Even Bergman even said that Tarkovsky was the best of them at the time. He's a genius, but not a lot of people in America know his stuff. But yeah, The Whale, man, Aronofsky. I was never really that big of a fan, but man, The Whale is just like boof. I like movies like that. That like Peanut Butter. You see Peanut Butter Falcon?
Yes. Yes.
It's it's like that, but it's even more like punch you in. It makes you cry more and it hits you in the gut more.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but like I like those kind of films, man. I like human stories. I like things that make you feel human.
Now I want to ask you this because one thing that as you mentioned earlier, you spent 2 years in Russia, but Russia has had such an impact in your life that you still carry all these years.
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
Not only because you met your wife there, but because those were formative years. There were years where you technically, as an American, went to live in what was considered at that time a hostile territory.
No, 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 no. It was after communism fell.
Okay. Okay.
And it was just the opposite. It was like Marty. I mean, they couldn't. Like we were like, I was the only guy with it. This is the only tattoo I had at the time. The cover of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Only criminals had like tattoos. I was like a rock star. It was like and it was joyous there. Communism had fallen, and it was there's like people could like there's music and all kinds of stuff. But see, I studied with this guy for 6 years, Leonid Lerman, and he gave me all these puzzle pieces, but I couldn't put it together. And when I went to Russia, it was like they had magnets, and they all started snapping together. So 2 years in Russia normally would not have been enough, but the 6 years prior to that, so basically I had 8 years of Russian training. And it wasn't academic training in the way you think. We're looking at like South American sculpture, we're looking at African sculpture, we're looking at sculpture from all over the world, Asian, Chinese, Indian, everything. First peoples in North America, indigenous folks from all over the world. We're looking at all that stuff, and that's what we call classical sculpture, not just like naked people in togas and stuff like that. It was very fascinating. There's a different way, a very almost mystical way of understanding art. A very different way. My school was, and my teacher is. I had dinner with him last night. That was amazing. But yeah, I mean, but everything I've done, whether I'm in ZBrush, anything I do, whether I'm doing some crazy Spider-Man drawing in Photoshop for 10 minutes, any single thing I do, my day job, my side work, my own work, absolutely everything. See, people think academic art is an end in itself, and it's not. I could draw you. If anybody goes online, you see these old drawings I did, like Hercules head and all this stuff, or life-size figures. That's never supposed to be an end in itself. That's just student work. You're supposed to build your wings so you could fly. And there's so many artists that didn't have that kind of training, like that are just so powerfully gifted that like Van Gogh couldn't. Van Gogh's my favorite anything of anything, along with Bowie, but Van Gogh's my favorite visual artist. Van Gogh wanted to try and draw that way, and he couldn't because he was just such a powerful force of nature. He just apprehended reality on a transcendental level so profoundly that he tried to draw academically, and his figures he couldn't fit himself into that mold. He was beyond that. And even if you say you look at Degas, if you look, there was a book that was around about 30 years ago. It was Degas, and like, I don't know, all the other kids in his class, guys, women, whatever, adults, from his academy, when he went to the French Academy or the École des Beaux-Arts, I forget specifically where. But if you look at like Degas' drawing of the model and the other like 30 people in the class's drawing of the model, Degas stands out like a shining light. the
Mm-hmm.
gift, his genius is already manifesting as a student.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like I don't consider like I'm just a sculptor, right? I'm just a sculptor, and like I make toys and make collectibles. I don't care if they're art or not. I don't give a shit. I really don't. I love making them. I
Mm-hmm.
also did the biggest statue in the history of the world. I made the digital sculpt for the biggest statue in the history of the world. And I thought they were just using as a concept model. Now when I look at blow-ups I see that the guy only sculpted the face because there's certain things that I did in software that you can only do in software. And having worked in a foundry that did enlargements for 8 years, I know the process. And when I see my stitch brush, my custom stitch brush,
Mm-hmm.
20 feet across somebody's foot that I sculpted.
Mm-hmm.
I know they use my model, but but it doesn't matter because I just don't. It's in my past, and I could go after him, and it could be a big, long, drawn out thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't need credit. I just don't give a shit. I just want to. I always think you should always think your best work's in front of you. I see
Mm-hmm.
guys. I see. Am I talking too much? I
No,
talk too
you're
much.
good. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I see guys dropping out of the industry. I see folks being fired, or I see people leaving the industry and or saying they're giving up sculpting altogether. And I won't mention names. And I empathize with them. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
it's like if that's their choice, that's their choice. If that's me or all this stuff about AI, right? All these people, I get it. AI is existentially threatening to all artists,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't have to stop how we make art. It may affect the way we make money making art for sure. Or
Mm-hmm.
who knows? It's too early to say.
Yeah.
But nobody can ever stop you making art the way you make art. So I fully support all of my brothers and sisters who are protesting AI and all that stuff. I 100% support it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I lost my ability to make an income as an artist, I'd get a job at Walmart, Home Depot, 2, 3 of them at a time. I don't give a shit. And this is not hyperbole because I've never worked less than 2 or 3 jobs my entire adult life. And I'd still make art in the basement at night like I used to do, before. I mean, I'd still find a way to make my art. I could never ever stop. Just like I said, I was drawing ever since I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't. I just. I can't. I
It
can't stop doing it. I just don't see like.
is a
I'm
driving
a,
force of your life.
yeah. I mean, everything changes. I don't. This AI thing. I'm not an advocate of it. I do think it's funny seeing people. Not funny, but nobody's quitting Facebook and Meta. Facebook/Meta are one of the biggest funders and of research into developers of AI technology on the planet. So every second we spend on Facebook, we're supporting the biggest maker of AI. And I'm not trying not to shit on my friends. I mean, I'm on there too, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how we get away from it. It's already, and AI is not just visual art. It's like, it's going to do things in the medical industry, in the military, in like all kinds of different sciences. At NASA's using AI to do different things. I read about like really crazy cool things.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, as a child of Isaac Asimov, reading the Foundation books and the robot books, would I love to see a positronic human being or positronic being someday, like Mr. Data? Kind of, yeah. Is it scary? Yeah, like that was my dream since I was a little kid.
It is kind
I
of
mean,
funny because, as you mentioned it, the interesting thing is, like, if you grew up like I did, like you as a kid, as a child, reading all these classic stories, literature, where there's sci-fi stuff, where there is all the mythology, all that. As a kid, I read all these books. It's like it prepare you for what we're seeing now. It's like I see it. I know some people kind of are afraid of it, but at the same time, to me, it's like, okay, this is just a vision that is coming to fruition. The vision from people that who wrote about this over 100 years ago. It's amazing. It's at the same time it's kind of chilling because how things are advancing and how this technology is changing the way we perceive things. But as you mentioned, I think that AI, even with all the fear, and there's so much that we don't know yet, but it's a tremendous tool that can be used for a lot
yeah,
of things.
well, the thing about it is, I get the visual art side. I mean, for me, mm, let's just say in any sphere of influence I have, it's like doesn't doesn't count as original work. I'm not a big. I don't use it myself. I'm not a fan of anyone else using it. I'm not a supporter of it.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way Adobe's art director mentioned, he's like, it has interesting possibilities, but for now, we're staying away from it. And he worded it very eloquently. But for me, it's like, yeah, the science fiction stuff made us open to this stuff, but it also inspired it the same way that like countless astrophysicists and NASA scientists and engineers say that their careers are direct result of Star Trek, the old series, original series,
Mm-hmm.
and then and next the first space shuttle is even named after the Starship Enterprise. I mean, there's countless people. The Space Force logo looks just like Starfleet's
The
logo.
Starfleet low, yeah.
You know, I mean, so all these cyberneticists. Now, there's a famous Polish science fiction writer, Stanislaw Lem. It's not just Isaac Asimov. We're talking about Philip K. Dick, right? Do androids dream of electric sheep? You have the replicants in Blade Runner,
Mm-hmm. Oh
but
wow.
in the book, they're androids.
Hmm.
I mean, you know, in Philip K. Dick's original book, they're
Mm-hmm.
androids. Stanislaw Lem, the guy that wrote the book that Solaris, the American George Clooney film, but the classic Andrei Tarkovsky Russian film is based on. He's one of the greatest science fiction writers. He's right up there with Ursula K. Le Guin and
Mm-hmm.
Philip K. Dick. Um, he had books called The Siberia. And this is internet. He's internet. It's published in Polish, all translated in English. Artificial intelligence has been explored in science fiction forever. You can't tell me that these scientists and engineers weren't inspired by it when they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read that Google engineers project Lambda,
Lambda. Okay.
I guess you call it a chatbot now. But I was like, damn, man. I was like, wow, the poetic way this thing responded and
Mm-hmm.
the way it seemed like a child and it had this sense of wonder and it was weird. And it wrote poetry and short stories and like and it had multiple layers of meaning and it was able to analyze literature and it was just I don't know, man. I mean,
It's
how do
crazy.
you
Yeah.
how do you sit there and love C3PO and then say you don't like artificial? I just don't get it. You
Oh
know, like
wow, that is a good way to put it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like everybody loves BB-8, right? But
Uh-huh.
it's like I think we're just in a period of, I think it's too early to worry about anything or tell. We're in a period of transition. Conversely, I know a really famous, world famous illustrator, great painter, probably best painter and the best illustrator on the planet for children's books and things like that. Russian guy. And I'm like, well, you know, his career kind of, he started, it wasn't, his output changed. And I was like, what happened? He said, Photoshop. This is before AI. He's like, Photoshop. He's like, who wants to pay me $10,000 or whatever to spend 2 months doing a painting for a cover when they can have some asshole Photoshop it in like 2 hours?
Yeah.
Take a photo, and that look at most book covers now. Fiction. Walk through Walmart, go to Barnes and Noble if any still exist.
Mm.
Look at actual physical books. Look at the book covers. You don't see the kind of you don't see the kind of great science fiction painted covers from the 60s and 70s anymore. You know what I mean? Like some of the greatest, my favorite art also like sci-fi book covers from the 60s. Oh man, in the early 70s, man, that revolution in illustration was like radical, man.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see any of that stuff anymore.
Like for example, another thing you mentioned, like recently, when I went to watch the Ant-Man movie, the Quantumania, I love the film, and I know a lot of people didn't like the film.
I loved it. I'm right with you. Yeah,
I liked it, but one thing that surprised me, and I think one of the biggest criticisms people were having is of the digital, of the CGI, because it's massive, the CGI in this film, and it's we have come to a place where from movies where everything was done practically into everything is done by in a computer and it's everything in the background. I've never been offended by it. I know some people have a hard time with CGI, but to me, it's just an evolution of the industry itself to produce visual references that we didn't have before. We weren't able to see none of this before.
I thought the first half of Ant-Man is some of the most visually inventive stuff I've ever seen on screen. I'm not saying that the CGI was great. I'm not judging that. I'm not evaluating. I'm not talking about the CGI itself, but the CGI, the diversity of the aliens and the characters
Oh
in that
yeah.
opening, that first half an hour, original, different. Like this for me. This was like on like Star Wars Cantina level of originality you've never seen
Mm-hmm.
before. Crazy stuff. One thing I'll say about digital that I think is bad
Okay.
for the tradition for collectibles,
Mm-hmm.
and this is where I get this is the cranky old man part. I think the stuff that Bowen did, the stuff Sideshow Sideshow still to an extent. Bowen statues were the most pure in terms of their sculptural beauty.
Correct.
But all this Griebel, all this like in music, right? If you just had one drum beat,
Mm-hmm.
it's not music. Or the bass, you have to have pauses. You have to have space between beats,
Correct.
space between notes. I mean, you're talking to a guy that doesn't stop speaking, so I'm like a total hypocrite, right? But so you look at all these statues, like these prime ones and all these other XM, and they're making, and it's just so much effing detail on top of detail, detail, detail. Your eye doesn't have anywhere to stop and take a break.
Exactly.
And it's like, and I know I tend to say, like, I know some collectors like that maybe, but it's like, how many variant heads and how many this and how many that, like that's all cool. But when you just have nothing but detail all over the place,
no focal point.
nowhere for the eye to rest.
No.
And the manufacturing costs of them are astronomical.
Oh yeah.
There was a grace to DC Directs and Bowen Designs. Diamond's still doing it. I think Diamond's cinematic based work is awesome, and I've been gifted with a lot of opportunities to have a lot of fun with that, like Moff Gideon, all the Star Wars stuff I did, MCU stuff. Man, I love doing that stuff. But but Diamond's gallery, the PVC stuff, the dioramas, I think they're the last standard bearers for that old fashioned Bowen kind of comic book, like Gene St. Jean's Vision. That was awesome, and they do so many cool superhero statues that still feel like the comic books. They feel like the comics. They
Correct.
feel, and this other shit. Like I don't need to see Batman or whatever character. It's all cool. I'm not knocking anything, but like when these statue companies, whatever. XM's White Knight Batman statue that my friend James Kane sculpted. James Kane's one of my favorite sculptors too. He's a brilliant sculptor. That White Knight Batman big quarter scale, that was amazing. That thing was amazing. And I think Sean Gordon Murphy actually even designed a special bike for that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like when you see like this, I don't need to see like, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. Seams everywhere, textures on top of textures on top of textures. Like all this different detail. How many grenades and how many this and how many that, and like, or like how many different piping lines and and cell textures and all this stuff. It's great, man. If it's replicating a cinematic hyper realistic, if it's a realistic attempt to manifest something that's like a film character, I get it.
But like you said, even the war said it like that when it's so hyper realistic that it's way above reality. It's not something that, sometimes we need to go. I feel that the industry is going in that, some companies have gone in that direction where there's so much in it, so much detail, so much, it's so extreme that it doesn't feel real.
I think but they're obviously doing it because there's a market for it. So I'm just speaking from my own perspective. Other folks might love that stuff, and God bless them. Whatever keeps the industry going is great. But me personally, and this is where I start getting to be the cranky old man, I like the pure, like for me, John Buscema, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, like Jim Aparo, John Byrne. I worship John Byrne. Jesus God. But then the contemporary artists like Frank Whiteley is he's a genius.
It's a genius.
Look at the clarity of his form, the cleanliness of it, the power of it's just
the storytelling. Yeah,
but the way his forms, the rhythms, the shapes, the masses, he doesn't need to have like, and Mike Allred, man, the purity of his work, it's the simplicity of it, and I don't know, man, there's a lot of great artists whose names I don't know. I read a lot of new stuff. Actually, believe it or not, I still do. Greg Capullo. Greg Capullo, man, his Scott Snyder and what he and Scott Snyder did on Batman, even the Dark Knights and Dark Knight's Metal, that stuff's whack. It's ridiculous. It's awesome. And, I think there's space for all of it. I just know I know which part of that space I like to be in. That's all. You know what I mean? You're talking to a guy that's wearing a stupid Flash Gordon shirt. I'm 53 years old.
One of my favorite movies. Yeah, as a kid.
but I don't want to live in, but I could never be one of those guys that use like Marvelous Designer, the the drapery sculpting software.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love making collectibles. I love doing it. I love doing clay sculpture. I'm building my clay studio right now. First one I've had in 17 years. I love working traditionally. I want to I love making my little sketches. I love my day job, which is a gift from the force, God, the source, Jack Kirby, the source, anything you want to call it. Yeah, man. My day job is my number one commitment. I have to say, it's all that matters to me, honestly, as an artist right now. It's the best opportunity I've ever had in my life. It's the most important thing. Collectibles is something I do on the weekends, but it's something I've always done on the weekends because my day job's never been anything less than the most important thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I was thinking about walking away from it about 5 years ago is because I was making a lot of money in collectibles. A lot. That's all. That's not what's important. I mean, I don't need a lot. I need enough. I think I think you got to find a balance between enough. A lot is gluttonous, and I think it's not healthy. Or if you're in it, I mean, I get it. There's some people that just in it to make money, and I don't judge that. But for me,
Now, what do you do? Because of course we've been talking about your work, and definitely, as you mentioned to me even before we started the recording, that you technically work like 100-hour weeks, which is extreme. But you've been doing it for so many years with your daytime job plus all the projects that you do with all these companies. How do you maintain that sanity? What do you do besides the work in order to keep yourself grounded?
I've always one thing that pisses me off. Oh, you're lucky you have a day job. I'm like, yeah, really? I worked 18 years to get that job. I worked my ass off to get that job. And then I would come home at 5 o'clock. I'd eat, take a nap at 7 and work till 1, 2 in the morning, get up at 5 o'clock and did that for years and years and years. And I was able to do it because I was young. As I got older, I had to slow down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got this promotion a couple years ago, that required all of because my former position was just being, well, not just, it's very important, but I was a practicing artist.
Mm-hmm.
But then once my role expanded, it required all of my head space. I mean, I got big ass head, but so then side work became, while the economic imperative of it remained, it became, with the pressures of my day job changing,
Mm-hmm.
it was like a role reversal. Like in the old days, like sculpting collectibles was like my escape. No. There was a lot of pressure balancing, like doing 3, 4, 5 companies at once. And I'd go to work and I'd be like, oh, cool, I'm just doing this. And I could really just put myself all into it. It was like an escape. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun. And now, not that my day job's not fun, it's bigger. It's a lot bigger. It's a lot of pressure. And it's pressure that I bring on myself because I'm being given opportunities to expand and grow in my role. So I'm taking on this stuff. It's all positive pressure, if that makes sense. It's responsibilities, rather responsibility. But now collectibles has become like my little hat. It's like it's like my happy space, because I've been doing it for so long. I've been sculpting digitally since 2001.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how the technology changes. I mean, and I'm not Mr. Fancy Pants digital sculptor. I use like 3 brushes. My friend Paul Gabriel at ZBrush calls me a brute force sculptor. I know how to texture map. I don't use any tricks. I don't use any bullshit. I literally sculpt with 3 brushes every single thing I do. And I'll use primitives. I do use Z-modeler and stuff, but yeah, man. I mean, that's only because I gave up Maya and freeform and shit like that. I read a lot of comics. You've seen pictures of my studio on
Yeah.
Facebook and stuff. I have my backlog of omnibuses and collected editions is probably at least about 100 that I haven't gotten to yet.
Oh wow.
And I can't. And I just got the Captain Marvel omnibus.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get the Marvel Planet of the Apes omnibus when that comes out. I like reading. Look, Silver Age Teen Titans right here. I mean,
Oh yeah.
It just happens to be here. But like, so here's Pete Craig Russell's brilliant Stormbringer Elric, right?
Elric.
I have this here, right?
Howard the Duck. Yeah.
and I look at the back, and automatically, no matter where I am, if I'm here on a road trip, if I'm Washington D.C. for my day job.
Uh-huh.
I'm in LA. I'm in my house in Jersey, here in the mountains. You open up these books, right? And these panels. It's like I like the way Grant Morrison talks about comics in a very meta way.
Mhm.
You're participating with this comic. You open up this comic, no
Mhm.
matter where you are, no matter where you are geographically, this grounds you to your background, your history, who you are, what you love,
Mhm.
what inspires you.
Mhm.
Comics are, to me, the most special medium in that way, because you always have home in your hands, no matter where you are.
Mm.
And so I love comics. Like, end of the day, what I do is I read comics for like as long as I can, until I feel like I have to be. I leave at 6 for work, so I get home like anywhere between 6:30 and 8:30,
Uh-huh.
and I work, but only like Monday through Thursday, because we do 4 10-hour days. So and even on the weekends, like even tonight, what I'll do, I'll I've got my John Byrne New Gods omnibus. I got my
Mm.
John Byrne. I have the Thing omnibus out there. I have Grant Morrison's X-Men omnibus, and
Mhm.
I have Jim Apparo's Volume 2, um, DC collection. I think I've an omnibus out there, maybe not. So I'll read though. I like reading them around robin. I'll read like I said, 1 or 2 issues out of each one.
Uh-huh.
I read
I
comics until
do
I
the
feel like
same.
yeah, I read comics until I start feeling a little bit, and then I'll pop on. Like last night, I watched Picard episode 4. I was like, oh, this is great. Like
Yes.
I saved Mandalorian because that's what my son and I.
Watch with your
That's
son.
that. Yeah, but yeah, I'll pop on a Disney Plus or a Marvel show, or DC show, whatever's on. Like I love Doom Patrol. Um, I read comics until I feel like it's almost time, and then I watch TV until I can't. I don't like if it's a weekend like this, I'll watch the whole episode. But if it's a work night, school night, I call them school nights.
Uh-huh.
If it's a school night, I watch like 15 minutes of it here, 15 minutes of it there.
Yeah.
Like I love Bad Batch. I'm watching the last 2 episodes of Bad Batch
Yeah, I've
right
been
now.
watching that one too. Enjoy it very much.
It's incredible. It's I mean everybody like Andor's great, but Bad Batch also gives you so much incredible background that like
Mm.
nobody even pays attention to Bad Batch. There's like so much like mission critical Star Wars in that
Yeah.
show. It's like ridiculous.
We're living in amazing times. Like all these shows coming up everywhere through the digital services, shows, movies. It's just amazing. I'm just if I would look back as a child reading comics back in the day, which there were not many kids reading comics,
Yeah.
to see now what this has become. Like everything is sci-fi, all these movies and all that. And yes, we can be picky and critical about a lot of things now, but it's just an amazing time to see all this art, all
Yeah,
these
yeah,
stories.
ooh, there's part of me though. You see my Justice League jammies? No,
No,
I got
you're
first,
good.
no, I got first shop Justice League pajamas I've got up here. They're like probably 10-year-olds, but they fit me. I'm not tall. But there was something special about this man.
Boba Fett, yeah.
No, I mean like this time, you know who he was. You know anything about him. There was such a great, except for the Marvel comics, which were like Jackson the Rabbit and all that other amazing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. But I love the fact that I could make my own stop motion animation Star Wars 3 Struggle of the Alliance with my
Mm-hmm.
Kenner figures. There was there was a lot left for you to explore.
Yeah.
Like one of these kids, one of my friends in grade school, he writes a play about like Luke Skywalker fighting like Ridley Scott's Alien. I was like, what the hell is that? But it was cool. And now
Mm.
I love that there's all this content. It makes me sad that this content will live. There'll be it, it makes me a little bit feel weird that this content will continue to go on after I'm dead. I never thought that,
Mm.
but but I also appreciate the richness of content available to us. But there's just so much shit out. I don't have time, man. I
That's
watched
true. That's true.
the only show I binged was Peacemaker. I saw that. I watched Peacemaker in like
I was
two
blown away
days.
by that movie. I was impressed by it. I wasn't
That's my.
expecting much, but I was so impressed when I watched that one.
I didn't want to watch it. At first, I thought like James Gunn's Suicide Squad was a little bit heavy for me, and I thought James Gunn was giving like an FU to Disney by
Mm-hmm.
making it so violent with the curses and everything.
Yeah,
It was great, but I was like, whatever. And then, man, once, but I love James Gunn. I love him, love
I
him, love
love
him.
him.
Love
Yeah.
him. So once he switched teams, And I realized that Peacemaker's basically the prequel to the James Gunn DC universe, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'll watch it. And God, it's my favorite. It's like my favorite superhero TV show ever. John Cena, he has more Make-A-Wish Foundation Guinness Book World Record holder for World Make-A-Wish Foundation requests.
I wasn't sure. I didn't know.
Yeah, he's just a good dude, and James Gunn, it's just so funny. Every from that opening, it's just like that show is just so much like there's a lot of violence and stuff, and
Oh yeah. You know what? It was
but
impressive. It was
it's funny.
impressive to me because, as you know, I never really cared much about Cena as an actor. You know, he played this and that, and I always thought that he was just playing himself. But this show make me like him, make me like him as an actor. Like I was like, oh wow, Gunn definitely did a fantastic job with this show.
Yeah, you take this one-dimensional character
Oh
and
yeah,
over the course of a season, make him a fully well-rounded, beautiful, like
it,
awesome human
it
being.
was I was impressed. A fantastic all around everything from the intro song to the music,
And then
the soundtrack, everything was just
did you
perfect.
see and then I forget the actor's name, but the guy who was the head of Team Peacemaker is now High Evolutionary in the Guardians film too.
Yes, yes, that's right, that's right.
And I love the way that they've made High Evolutionaries instead of the helmet, the ridges are like they look like they're part of his like his they're biomorphic, you know, like
Uh-huh.
I do I dig I gave my one friend who was a designer for Eternals. I don't think he likes me anymore. Ian Joyner. He's a great designer. That's the guy the name I was trying to think of. He was also putting like not at the same time that Colby Jukes was doing the stuff for DC. Ian Joyner was popping up this great Wolverine that he had rapid prototype. This is back in like 2006, seven, whatever. But Ian Joyner was a designer for Eternals, and I private messaged him. I shouldn't have done it. I was like, dude, it was great, but man, like those aren't deviants, and the deviants didn't look like that, and like I did some fanboy bullshit on them, like, and the Celestials. I'm like, where's Jack? And like, and this didn't look like. For me, the Eternals are so specifically Kirby to not Kirby them up. I
Uh-huh.
get I understand that film characters have to be elevated to be in a cinematic universe. But actually, I loved Eternals, and Ian's a genius. I loved what he did. I just had the divorce. I had to pull up my buddy. I have a buddy at work, John, and he says you never go into film with expectations. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you go with expectations, you're gonna ruin it. Just wait to enjoy something new. So I watched Eternals again, but just try to look at it for fresh eyes. And the beauty, the concept design, and the artwork was amazing. I love the Eternals. Nobody else. I mean, I mean, Star Fox. Shit, I can't wait for. I don't know who Harry Styles is. My kids are all like, "Ew." I'm like, I don't know who he is. You know, I have to this day. I guess he's a pop star. I
He
don't know.
is, and I can say that lately I've been listening to some of his songs, and actually not that bad. He's a pretty good singer.
I just started listening to Gorilla's new album today. I was really shocked by that. I
But
didn't know.
I'm always been like, and I love music no matter what. So I go from all different type of music, and I love the sound as long as it's good. I listen to it. All different genres and all. Yeah, it's you know, like one thing like I said about that I like, for example, even going back to what the reason why I love Thor Ragnarok, the film from the MCU, is that one of the things that I enjoy about the film is how many visual references were there that remind you of Kirby. Um,
Yeah, that was the most Kirby'd out one.
it was the most.
Although, but wasn't there a Celestial in Ant-Man? Where did I see a Celestial head? I saw a real Celestial. Like
Um,
a,
it was on. Well, it was on the Guardians of the Galaxy. They have the Celestial head. Of course, this is based on
no,
the.
no, no. I mean, I saw a real Kirby Celestial.
Oh, okay, that was in the most recent Thor movie, Love and Thunder.
Is that what
That
it was? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
there
yeah,
was a
yeah.
Celestial too there. I don't know. It just to like you were saying, just to think about
Just
all
like,
the
but the
stuff that was taken from
like,
Kirby.
oh yeah, like all the like Jeff Goldblum's like his little private box, his I forget what they're called, the stadiums, but his
Coliseum or
his super box,
yeah.
like with all the Kirby graphics and stuff. Yeah, there were a lot of nice nods to Thor. Um, yeah, those the Marvel Universe designers are great. Um, I think there's a utility though. I think I don't know if I don't know like if constantly having the same folks work on the same thing, the same people directing it, because certainly you run the risk of there being a certain kind of homogeneity in terms of
Yes.
the costumes and stuff. So like, but I'm not judging anything. I'm just saying like I think that was one of the problems that George Lucas had with the first two prequels, which I love actually. I love. I
Mm.
worked for a guy who was a multimillionaire and nobody ever said no to him. And when I watch the behind the scenes stuff and I see George Lucas, like I see like 100 super sculpey maquettes, and I know what a pain in the ass super sculpey is. And George Lucas like, I like that head on that body, and you see the sculptors go, oh, or you see all these beautifully rendered like storyboards, and he's a big marker X X. I'm like,
Oh my
oh,
god.
oh.
Ruin it.
Nobody, because when he made Star Wars, he made the first three movies, even especially Star Wars: A New Hope. You know, he's just trying to do his. I think there's a benefit to making
Something new.
Tarkovsky, the filmmaker I talked about, said there's artists. It's good for artists to have hardships because it makes them. They have to. It makes it. Artists not suffer, but nothing. Not, making art shouldn't be easy. But in general, like I think when you have less to work with, it forces you to be more creative.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like mothers and mother. Wait, necessity is the mother of invention.
Correct.
When you have you have all the money in the world, you have an army of people licking the bottom of your shoes saying yes, 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 yes. I mean, it's kind of hard to make something good out of that. That's why you had to bring in people to help with the script in episode 3. And I love Revenge of the Sith.
Hmm. Now coming to now to the end of the podcast. Now that you have shared a lot, and I appreciate all the stuff you share. You know, you're just such a fountain of wisdom and storytelling, which is amazing to me.
It's
What
very
would
kind.
you
I'm just old.
what will you tell, like, I know that right now you have opinion in reference to what is happening in the industry, and I know a lot of young artists or people that want to get into this industry, whether it's collectible industry, whether it's toys, whether it's statues, or even produce their own stuff. They might feel scared because what they're looking at, what they're seeing. There's a lot of fear mongers around there. For a lot of obvious reasons. Some people have the right reasons to be afraid. What would you tell young people that they want to get into this path? What
Well,
would
I'd
your
say
advice to them?
don't have your head up your ass and think you don't have to have a day job while you're getting started. Number two, I think if you can be creative enough, I think now is the time for the entrepreneurial spirit in people to take over. I think Kickstarter and crowdsourcing.
Sourcing.
I think that's the way to go. I think if you get your own IP rolling and get it taken off and do your own thing, then you have to worry about a company closing and this and that. Um, I don't see I don't know if collectibles is a viable way for people to make incomes going into the future. Companies like these big companies where they're doing these big I'm not talking about sideshow, but these other companies doing quarter scale and third scale statue. I'm not talking about PCS either, but paying people $1,200 for a statue that people used to get paid $10,000, $12,000 to do. The industry's like, I don't know, man. But most of these companies are people I don't have experience with. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have any advice. All I know is I'm just grateful that I have clients that I've been friends with for many years that still trust me. Diamond Select Toys I've worked with now since I don't know how, it's been like 15 years or some shit like that. It's been about 12. No, it's about 13, 14 years. I'm blessed that Chuck still trusts me to do stuff for him. I've let him down many times, and he always gives me a chance to get back up. I've given my art director Dev a hard time, and he gives me grace to. I'm not religious. I don't mean to use that language, but
Hmm.
he gives me the grace to get second chances. I've had more second chances from Diamond than I deserve. Dark Horse as well. They're very good friends of mine. I know all the people I work with, especially Rebecca and Chris, are good friends of mine in the industry. And I don't know what to tell anybody else. I mean, yeah, try and be a good guy and hang around long enough so you know enough people that you can figure out a way to get work. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know what to tell anybody starting out because I don't know what it looks like on that side of it anymore.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm still just trying to hang in there. I'm barely in this business anymore, man. Not
Hmm.
because I don't want to be, because it's just like, I mean, I'm like I said, I have. It's not that I'm barely in this business. Just like business has changed, and I'm just glad to still have the companies that
They'll trust you.
that like the way I sculpt still.
Mm-hmm.
That might change, you know. I don't know. I think I could do anything in any company we want me to do. All that stuff with all that detail, it's honestly not that hard to do. It just takes more time. There's nothing in the collectibles industry that's actually really difficult to do if you know what you're doing. If
Mm-hmm.
you have a basic fundamental knowledge of the software, and you have just a basic skills like talent level and and that and all this stuff. If you know how to make things, shape. If you know how to make if you know if you know the shape, know how to make shapes that look like shit, and you just have to make more of them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's not hard. It's not that hard, honestly. But I don't know. I really have no advice for anybody anymore, and I don't get it. I get a lot of people. I get tons of DMs and PMs. People asking me. I don't know what to tell you because half more than like 70% of my clients are gone. They don't even exist anymore. They're just not giving out work.
Mm-hmm.
Even Super Seven hires all these people in house, and then they fire a whole bunch of them. I just heard, and I don't know what's going on. McFarlane, I don't. I think they're all in house. Um, I don't know what work there is. Really don't. I think the safest bet, honestly, is probably get a job at a toy company
Mm-hmm.
because people are always going to be making toys.
Yeah.
And that's something a friend told me that switched from a collectibles company to a toy company. I think he's absolutely right. Safest bet is to try and get a job with Hasbro or Mattel or Jazzwares or something like that, and or freelance for them at least because I think there's more security in plastic than in resin.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Bigger market. Yeah.
Walmart's. I mean, I was at Walmart today to pick up some gym equipment for the basement, a couple of dumbbells, just barbells, dumbbells.
Mm-hmm.
And I always go through their toy aisle.
Me too.
Yeah,
Always.
that's right. But my Walmart, that's where I got
I
this.
got that too.
I got my Supermobile. I mean, yeah, McFarlane. I don't know. I think I pissed them off or something. They're like they wanted. We had a misunderstanding, and it wasn't even personal. It was like it was just something they want misunderstanding, and I did that static shock. I didn't articulate it, mind you. I just did sculpted. I don't think I sculpted electricity coming out of his hands. I can't remember. But I did so much shit for them over the years. I worked for them for a long time too. They're a great company. They're still a great company. Todd McFarlane's a genius, and
Mm-hmm.
Ed Frank that runs the collectibles division. He's a great guy, and they're good people. McFarlane. I don't have anything bad to say about anybody. I mean, I did shit on Nick at the beginning of the conversation, and but I don't have any animosity towards them either. I don't. It doesn't matter anymore. Nothing matters. All that matters is being good to each other and being kind. I'm
Right.
not trying to get all religious. Just saying, man. I mean,
Yes.
this collectibles industry, nothing lasts forever, man.
Nothing
It
lasts
didn't.
forever.
This shit did not exist like this 30 years ago. It's like resin kits. It's resin kits. I go to Brave New Worlds in Manhattan, and they're resin kit models that you assemble and paint. They're vinyl kits rather,
Mm-hmm.
vinyl kits. There wasn't a collectibles industry,
No.
and then you have because you had your toys,
Yeah.
Mattel and Hasbro, and then DC Direct comes along and starts making like these
Little.
the first comic accurate things ever.
Mm-hmm.
And then Gentle Giant, Sideshow, these. There wasn't a collectibles industry 30 years ago. Who thinks there's going to be one 3 years from now? I
That's
don't
true.
know. I
Nobody
hope there
knows.
is.
Yeah. Nobody knows. It's just hard to tell.
One art director explained to me very intelligently. He said, "These millennials, digital for them, everything on. They don't gather things. They're more nomadic. They go from city to city, job to job. Like they don't really. It's not our culture. Consumer culture isn't really thing based anymore.
No.
NFTs, this and that. Digital comics. I can't even look at a digital comic, only because I don't like looking at that white screen. I miss like when I do my comic book sketches. I make the background yellow on purpose so it looks like 4-color ink.
Mm.
I mean, I'm a little bit of I'm an old school guy that way, but yeah, it's just I owe my entire career to being a digital sculptor,
Mm-hmm.
100%. But I don't. I'm not a TikTok person. I use social media to. I used to use it for marketing, and I was cultivating a persona. It was a
Mm-hmm.
brand. Like there was Joe Menna was a brand. I used to do his Facebook Live videos,
Yeah.
and the Joe Menna. Even when everything was calculated. Even when I showed a family shot, I was working out great. I was doing really well. I was making. I was really successful in the collectibles industry for a long time. And then I just decided to say F it. And then like, I'm just going to do it because I love it. And if I'm, hopefully I get hired, and whatever I put on social media now, it's just like me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not me. It's not me trying to like
Impress
engender.
others. Yeah.
Yeah. Or no, not impressed, but there's no narrative there. You know, it's like,
Yeah. No
it's
intent.
more, it's more just me just genuinely connecting with my friends,
And that's good.
shit like that. I think, but speaking of which, I better reconnect with this job I'm working on.
Yes. Yes.
That's 2 years of that's 2 hours of your life you're never gonna get back.
No.
Nobody's gonna no. I guarantee you, nobody watches 2 hours. This bullshit. I guarantee. This might be the last podcast you ever like. They make
Perhaps.
YouTube might shut you down after this.
Yeah. I like it though. But I want to say, Joe, I want to say thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate that you're open to share your world and your experiences. I think you're very you're Joe to me. Like every time I love to read your posts on Facebook. I love what you share.
Thanks.
And it has nothing to do, like you said, you have no filters. You know, you're the type of person that
Yeah, that's fucking true.
and that it's good. You know, like I feel that sometimes you know, some other people are trying to be this persona, but you're not. You're just you. And I think that shows a better picture of the world that you're living. And as a consumer, as a collector, I'm grateful for that, because I can see that you are just like me. You're a person that loves these
Look,
things.
it's a continuum, man. I think the greatest gift of all collectibles, I think the greatest gift of any artist is to be able to make things that make people happy. And in this collectibles community, you, me, I don't exist without you, and you don't have the shit that you want to put on your shelves without me, and the other legions of people that it takes to make that one individual thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're all, it's a brother. I
Connected.
look at its fandom as a brother and sisterhood amongst all of us. We're all fans of this shit. Like
Connected.
yeah, we are connected, man. This is like, this is our new mythology. This is our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Popular culture is our culture. These are our this is our coyote. This is our Loki. This is our Zeus. This is our, you know, whatever Mesoamerican god you want to bring up, or East Indian. I hate to use that word East Indian. It sounds like some what do you call it, colonialist bullshit. But I'm just saying, like, man, it's just, this is what this really, it's really important stuff. I believe this stuff is really important.
Well, thank you,
So
Joe.
thanks for
And
your time, man.
no, thank you very much. And I want to say to everyone, if you're interested in following Joe, I will have the links in the description. You can follow him on Facebook. You can follow him also on Instagram. Is there any other place where people can see your work besides Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, just not allowed to talk about it. They can see it every day, every day, everywhere,
everywhere. That's true.
everywhere,
Everywhere. But thank you very much, Joe. And thank you, everyone, for watching and for listening to this podcast.
Thank you, JP.
God bless you, everyone. Thank you, Joe.
Take care.
You
Thanks.
too. Bye-bye.